Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Young Adult Matters. I'm here today with Ruby and with Miguel, and thank you guys for tuning in with us here at Young Adult Matters. Today we wanted to talk about grandparents, and it's very easy to just think about grandparents in the sense of, oh, well, they're the foundation of our family, but there's so much more to that, and they play a real vital role in our present and in our future. And as a grandchild with our grandparents, there's a very special bond. And that's what we wanted to talk about today, in the role that they play in our lives and in the memories that we have with our grandparents. So welcome, guys. And just real quick, what can y'all do? What can you talk about your grandparents, or memories that you have with them?
Do you have how many grandparents? Or?
Well, I would have 4. No. Yeah. 4.
By default, by definition.
By default 4, right? But the one I have with me, just my grandmother, my grandfather on my dad's side, my grandfather on my dad's side, he passed away when I was 10 years old. But then I have my 2 other parents on my 2 other grandparents on my mom's side, and they're in the Carolinas. I don't know which one. I can never figure out which one they're in, north or south, but they're in the Carolinas. So I pretty much just have my dad's mother, my grandmother, and she lives like about 10 minutes away from me, so she's really easy to get to. But on my dad's side, he's one of 10. So it's a huge family, since we're Mexicans.
How many grandkids can you just ballpark?
Ballpark, at least 50 that I can know of right now. Just at least.
So
there's at least. I know there's more. I was actually a few weeks ago, I was writing down the list of all the grandchildren, and I'm actually the youngest female granddaughter, and the youngest male grandchild is my brother. My brother is 8 years old, and I'm about to be 22.
So, never been really good at math, but that's about 5 per, average per.
We're the smallest on my family. We're the only ones that have just at least 2. Everybody else has at least 3 or more. The oldest grandchild is my cousin Roy, and he is about 45 years old.
Wow.
So, or maybe a little more.
So, it's interesting to see how, you have 50 cousins that we can trace back to the grandparents and the role that they played in their lives. Like you mentioned, your grandfather passed away when you were 10, but like your cousin Roy, I'm sure he was a much bigger part in his life, because he was obviously older when your grandfather passed away, or statistically or numbers speaking.
Well, actually, I don't really know too much about their relationship, but with me, I don't want to say who's the favorites or anything, but since
you're the favorite.
No, but I mean, there are no favorites. I'm pretty.
But maybe. You're the baby.
But I was a baby, yeah. So at the time before my grandfather passed away, and I love him dearly. I miss him so much. But he'd be the one who picked me up from school every single day. And once he started to feel sick, he made sure that somebody would pick me up from school every day. And then he also kind of contributed to me being physically the way that I am, because every time he would pick me up, he would get me a treat, like he would take me to get a chocolate or to get a raspa or something like that all the time. My grandfather and my grandmother. So thanks, abuelo.
that sounds like my in-laws, both my parents and my in-laws. So my children are very fortunate. I have three kids. I have 3 kids. It's like, reminds me of my son. He just turned 3 and says, "Tengo 3." 3 años, and he shows the 2.
Or that episode, that movie of Shrek, it's like, pick number 3, my lord. Like he said, 2, 3. That one, the one with when they have to pick Fiona.
No, never saw it. No, just.
I guess, but Shrek, you know what you guys.
We'll talk about movies on another show.
But I was, mentioning like my children have both sets of grandparents, and how cool that is. I don't think a lot of people can say that. I mean, that my grandfather on my dad's side died when my dad was maybe in his teens, so I never met him. I know he was a wonderful man, but I never met him. And my children have that beautiful blessing of having my in-laws and my parents, and I see the bond, the connection, the special role they play, because we are in charge of kind of the all the upbringing, the discipline, the parenting, the of course the love. But I think one thing I've heard,
they're in charge of the spoiling.
Yeah, that's it. You know, they say, okay, we get them, we can pamper them, spoil them, and then give them back to you. We enjoy them, and then here you go. Here's for homework. Putting them to bed. All the discipline or whatever, kind of challenging part of the equation. They get to really savor the grandchildren, and it's funny how I've seen my parents with each of my children, like they each had their special time. Their toddler years, they're particularly kind of close to their grandparents, where my parents will take them in and babysit. Thank you, Mom and Dad, and also cook with them and do little activities, and so those they watch videos with them and whatever they do, these formative years, the grandparents, in my case, my children have been very blessed with both sets of grandparents. So.
See, like myself, same situation on my mom's side. Her father, my grandfather, passed away when she was about 17. So I never got to meet him. And then on my dad's side, his father passed away 40 days after I was born. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember the relationship, but I remember it through my parents, like with my paternal grandparents, Papito Pepe, that's what everybody called him, and that those 40 days, unless he was in the hospital, he was with me. Because it was fortunate that we have the same name. My dad tricked my mom into, anyways, I won't get into that. But it's Jose Esteban Garcia, we have the same name, so it was the Tocayo, and of course I was the baby, and so obviously I don't remember, but my dad tells me that he was always there with me, and my grandma would call the bars, and he's not at the bars, he's with me. That type of stuff, that just kind of makes me laugh, and I remember that. But I think one of the roles that with grandparents, and I know my dad has mentioned this because my sister's pregnant, and it's with her first child. And so they're getting excited, kind of fitting into the role of grandparents, of being grandparents. So my dad says, like, we need to take her to ride a horse because that's what we did in the ranch, and we need to do this. So that sense of instilling tradition, and like we have a wagon in the house, in our backyard. It's decorative, but it's there because my dad says, well, we always had a wagon and we did this, and so he's already talking about putting the baby there and taking her for a ride and stuff like that. It's that role of the traditions. Can you all mention or share with us any traditions that were passed down from your grandparents or that they shared with you all?
Well, before I kind of mentioned my grandparents and those traditions, I mentioned my folks, but also my in-laws play such a huge role in my children's lives, and kind of ties into traditions because my father-in-law would pick up my children and always take them to eat an ice cream, and won't mention what particular ice cream shop, but it's their favorite, and grandpa, and he'd go pick them up and take them for ice cream. So similar to your grandfather, And,
well, on the same line, my grandma on my mom's side is the one that took me to have my first Whataburger. So
whoa.
It's a staple in my life, and it was always, if
and you love Whataburger.
I do. I should get paid for it.
They follow me on Twitter.
Yeah, I follow them.
Oh, yeah.
and so she took me to get my water. So every time I see a Whataburger, I remember my grandma. Now that she passed away 2 years ago, I drive by the Whataburger, particularly the one that we went to, and so she didn't have a car. We were going to my first Whataburger, but she taught me how to cross the street.
Oh, wow.
And so that's something that kind of she passed down to me, but associated with food.
That's something I have nothing. I can't cross the street. Every time I always think I'm going to get hit by a car.
Ruby dies, crash, car accident.
No, God forbid. But
oh, I'm sorry, but
yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, no, that's just my father-in-law has kind of that connection with the children that he routinely would pick them up from school. And still to this date, and take them for ice cream, and they have that image of their grandfather. And then my grandmother, who, by the way, is a big fan of the show, so Señora Mini.
Hello.
She has a very, special gift to really connect with the children like she's their best buddy. I mean, with my 2-year-old, just turned 3, they play and they speak, and I mean, he can be on the phone for an hour with his grandma, and he didn't even talk where you could make any sense of his babbling, and he would still chat away, and she would, you know, have this conversation. So I don't know, it's a very special, kind of unique relationship that she has with the little ones too, so I'm very grateful.
Do you remember any like particular lessons that you learned from your grandma? Like myself, you know, I learned how to cross the street. You know, with my other grandma, I learned how to work with the plants. You know, how to prepare the stuff like that, because she still has all these plants, and like right now she's on a search for a white tulip, tulipán blanco, and she's in the hospital, and right now her focus is
on the tulip.
She wants to find a white one. She has red and an orange, but she wants
like
a white
little
one.
Plant?
Mm-hmm. Un tulipán blanco es lo que quiere.
So if you're watching the show and you stumble across a plant with white tulip, cm.net, you can connect with Joe Garcia, and we're going to make his grandmother's dream come true.
Please help my sick grandmother. We're in a search. We've gone to all the flea markets, but anyways.
Yeah.
But do you have any lessons that you can associate with your grandparents?
Keep the family together. Just keep all, like I said earlier, on my dad's side, it's 1 of 10. So everybody has gone their separate ways pretty much, and with the passing of my grandfather, that's kind of what's happened. But every like, I think I've mentioned this before, like every Christmas, everybody would come down, whether they were from Mexico, whether they were in Oklahoma, or whether they were in Houston. Everybody would get together, and it was just humongous. It was a humongous party, and we would just, well, we'd party. That's what we would do. But and also I was very blessed to be there for their 50th anniversary. I was one of the flower girls, so that was really cool. And my favorite memories, they both include my grandfather. It was that one during the 50th anniversary, because everybody that I can imagine, just so many people were there, and we would just have so much fun. And then also when we would go to the beach, to the island, to SPI. So and that one of the traditions that you were talking about is we always have to get a sandía, because you know they have like the carritos, that all the fruits and stuff like that. So every time we go to the island, we have to buy sandía. We just have to. And
watermelon is, you know, and beach, they go together.
They do. They really do. So it's just, they both include my grandfather, and both include a lot of my family members. So one thing is just to keep the family together. I mean, despite of whatever
family situations, challenges.
Exactly. So that's one thing that I've really learned, and that I want to keep on doing. So I tell my brother, as he grows up, like, regardless of what our aunts and our uncles do, you know, like, or our cousins or anything, you and I, we have to keep us together. Yeah. Like, we just have to. So yeah.
Cool. That's really neat. My grandfather, he passed away when I was in my late teens, but he was such an influence in my life, because he lived with us when I was young. So he was my buddy. He was a big boxing fan and was a boxer. So I remember being 3, 4, 5 years old, and just spending my nights watching the Noches de Corona, the boxing bouts, and then whenever the big boxing bouts would be on TV, we'd have a kind of family affair, and so boxing was a really neat memory and bond as I was growing up with my grandfather, and
awesome.
A couple other things.
That's good. Well, you've been watching Young Adult Matters. We're going to take a break. Make sure you stick around as we go down memory lane and talk about our grandparents. See you in a little bit. Hello once again, and welcome back to Young Adult Matters. Today we're talking about grandparents, and we've been going down memory lane, talking about our biggest memories and kind of what they've taught us, and just sharing, going back and forth. And so go down memory lane with us and remember your grandparents. But we wanted to talk about the role that they've played, and then kind of specifically, you know, what they've taught you, or sometimes in our habits and things that we do, we can see our grandparents. So can you share with us any habits that you carry on from your grandparents?
Definitely. I mean, for me, my grandfather played every single instrument imaginable. Like, well, at least he tried to, you know. So he had the accordion, and he had the trumpet, and he had the piano, and he had everything. And I would just be so excited whenever he would bring a new instrument, and I would just like touch it, and I would just try to mess with it also, and then he would try to teach me a thing or two, and that's what just really sparked my passion for music and for learning different instruments. So my grandmother, she bought me a keyboard, and so I'm there, and I know a few songs, but there's my keyboard there in my room. I also have my dad's guitar that I mess with every now and then, and when I got into band, when I was a 6th grader, I played the clarinet, because he talked about how my grandfather would always wanted a clarinet, but he never got to play it. So that was the one instrument that I kind of had to on my own, you know, but the spark of music, the love for music, that's what my grandfather put in me. So.
And you know what? It makes perfect sense. I had the opportunity to be there for your little brother's birthday not long ago, and I saw your father sing and your uncle sing, and I was really, you know, impressed with their talent, and so now I see that it comes from your grandfather, no?
Oh yeah, he would sing all the time too. So yeah, from my dad's side. No, I totally forgot about that. But yeah,
cool.
See, but it's cool to see that stuff, to know that continues. And you know that the music and the love of music, and to share it, to bring the family together, it continues, and it's something that's sent from your grandfather, who probably came from his grandfather, who probably came from his grandfather and father, and you know, I think it's cool when we sit back and we look at that you know, that it's still alive and it comes through them. Like I know one quality is that I see in my dad, and I see it in my uncles, that they tell me about their father, is the jokes, that they crack jokes, and they crack a lot of, you know, the silly, cheesy cheesy jokes, and to see that,
goats.
well, that too, and, you know, and a lot of the times, like people, they've been told, like, you look like your mom, but you act like your dad, and then if I act like my dad and he acts like his dad, again, it's the same thing, the kind of going through generations.
And such an important, you know, component of life is happiness, enjoying it, and laughing. You know, so great that you got that kind of inheritance from your grandfather. Awesome. Yeah. My grandma used to tell me, mijito, and very wise woman. You know, they have all these wisdom pearls and sayings, dichos in Spanish. You know, and she'd say, you know, business before pleasure. Business before pleasure, and that kind of stuck. And
was she a businesswoman, or just kind of?
Well, you could say so. Yeah, she, you know, my family has always been kind of entrepreneurial, so they had businesses in the family, and she was, you know, more of a you know, the domestic CEO, you know, kind of ran the household and all affairs, but she would, you know, instill and discipline, you know, and kind of ask myself, is this the best use of my time right now, or is this what I should be doing? That comes from my grandma, you know, and she'd say, disciplina es hacer lo que tengas que hacer, cuando lo tengas que hacer, tengas ganas o no. It's like, do what you must do, when you have to do it, whether you want to do it or not. And so she would, you know, but also she was super, super funny, and would always, you know, come up with a very kind of sharp, cutting, you know, sense of humor.
Clever.
Yeah, very clever, very clever. And
well, I mean, I want to share with you something that I saw one time. I was on your computer, and I think it kind of stems from your grandmother, because it sounds like it, but it says
the inefficiency.
The inefficiency,
yeah,
right? It says any inefficiency at work affects your family, your time with your family.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from de la misma escuela de la abuela. It comes from the same schooling. So know that has come over to me too. So no relation, no connection, but some of her wisdom has transferred over to.
He has it in the
here.
office, you guys. We share the same office. Well, have a part in there, and then when I see his computer, I see that, and I'm like, what am I doing? I have to do stuff. keep it going. So yeah, so she has both affected our lives without even like knowing her.
Well, kudos to Grandma Esther.
So, you know, we've been sharing different stories and what we've learned from them and stuff, but why do you think that it's important to have a good relationship with your grandparents, besides the fun stuff, besides the ice cream, the Whataburger, the music? Why is it important to have that relationship?
Well, I think Miguel touched base on it very well about the wisdom. They have so much wisdom to share, because the reason why they're so wise is because they've already had that whole life experience, and once you have that, I mean, you just want to share with others, because I mean, I'm young and I already know that I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. Not to totally diss grandparents or anything, but imagine, like, they've had a whole lifetime and they've learned from those. So all grandparents want for their children and for their grandchildren is to not make the same mistakes that they did. So with that comes all this wisdom and knowledge, and that they pass it on to their children and their grandchildren, because all they want to do is watch them succeed. Surpass them. Any parent who loves their child they want them to be better than they were.
And I think you're touching a good point, and it comes. I think it comes from where they're coming from. They're coming from a place of just love. And you mentioned it when we love and then we can give them back. But no, I think it's important to know the connection with them, because all they want to do is love and love and love and just kind of outpour of love. So I think it's important for us to have that for when we do make mistakes, or when we, different situations. Like, I know sometimes we make mistakes and we don't want to go to mom or dad, but we can go to grandma because of where they're at. So I think, for me, that's the importance, that they come from a place of love and just genuine love. Grandma loves you. And sometimes we find it, or we find that same love in other places. Like, for example, I want to a big hello to Sister Nancy.
Sister Nancy Boucher.
I mean, if any of you know Sister Nancy, the way I describe her is just like a grandmother love. She comes from this loving place and nurturing, and always giving us little nuggets of wisdom, and I get that feeling.
Love, it's like she just it's caressing, it's nurturing.
It really is.
We love you, Sister Nancy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that she's like a grandmother to some people. I know she's a friend of the Newman Center there, and whenever she walks in, all the students flock to her, and it's that same type of relationship. So there's an importance to that in the faith side of it, to know that we're connected to, that God has kept these people in our lives for a reason, to share that wisdom. And, in a church full of tradition and sending things down through generations to generations, who better than grandparents, or who does it more exemplified?
And also the role that grandparents can play in the faith formation of the grandkids, because oftentimes it's the grandparents that will read the Bible stories to the kids, that will maybe take them to church, that will pray
the rosary, teach a lot of the tradition and like the devotionals. Because catechetical side note, before, after Vatican II, the big meeting that happened in the 60s, bishops got together. Okay, after that big meeting, after Vatican II, a lot of the prayers that used to be, you have to memorize them in your sacramental preparation, you have to do this, that kind of got lost a little bit. So the grandparents who were pre-Vatican II, they continue. I remember my grandma always said, you have to pray this, you have to pray the Apostles' Creed every day, and things like that, where she was like, it's your faith, you should live it. And again, it comes from mom. Not to say that my mom didn't do it, but my grandmother, she would really stake that in you. And in fact, right now, most of my family on my mom's side goes to Our Lady of Holy Rosary in Mission, because that's where the church that my grandma would go to. We live geographically in different territories, but they all go Saturday, 6 p.m. There they are, and then they go to dinner, because that's where my grandma went, and that's when my grandma was hungry after Mass, so we would all go to eat. So the faith is also instilled through the grandparents.
Yeah. Wow. And and I see that with my children too, and with even friends that say, well, you know what, I'm somewhat disconnected from the faith, but I'm having my child baptized because my parents keep kind of hounding me on that. And well, here is an invitation, and as they come to bring their children for infant baptism, there's an opportunity to connect or reconnect with a faith too. but it's because of the role the grandfather or grandmother is playing in that grandchild's life that they want to make sure that they are that they're part of the body of Christ, and that they are, that faith is such an important component of their lives.
I wanted to share a little quote, and it's, "Nobody can do for little children what grandparents do. Grandparents sort of sprinkle stardust over the lives of little children." And that's Alex Haley. And that, I think just those words just kind of sum it up, everything. That stardust is, we can substitute stardust and just sprinkle love. And love it. And love is such a big part of our faith. Scripture tells us God is love. So let's look at it. Let's say this again. Grandparents sort of sprinkle God on the lives of the little children, and that we can carry with us for the rest of our lives and continue to grow in our faith. So I really like that.
That's a beautiful quote. And I don't know how many of you watching at home are fortunate enough to have your grandparents, but we certainly, if you do have your grandparents, I know that I used to chat with mine about, like the Second World War and the Great Depression, and they went through some of these, kind of pivotal moments in history, and can also share a lot of these really rich stories with us. So tap into this wonderful resource you have to understand our past, and how some of these lessons can play a role in our future too.
And so we've been talking about grandparents today, and very extensively, and I think, I don't know, I'm just filled with joy, thinking about my grandmothers and my grandfathers and stuff like that. But I want to invite you, you that are watching there, we're online right now. Ruby will be online as the show is airing to talk to you guys. Find us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/CM page, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Facebook.com/CM page, and share with us. Share with us your most fond memories that you have with your grandparents. Let's go down memory lane. Let's get this, and remember this nice feeling. And remember that they shared that with us. And as we're online, that we come together as a community and we share with each other. So remember cm.net, our website, and Facebook, so we can share these stories together.
What's your favorite memory of your grandparents? Share that with us. And if you do have your grandparents, let's encourage everyone to go out there and
spend some
call
time
them,
with them.
Pick up the phone, make that phone call, visit your grandparents, make the most of the time that you have, because some of us, didn't have that opportunity.
Definitely. So remember, go out to your grandparents, reach out to them, take them out to dinner, hang out with them, share with us the stories that you have and the lessons that they've given you, and apply them every day. If you forgot maybe un dicho, try and remember that and apply it to your everyday life. Thank you so much for joining us today here at Young Adult Matters. We've had a great time going down memory lane. We invite you again, cm.net for our website. Stay tuned. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we have another great topic for you. We'll see you then. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.